today's meeting. I will invite my my name's Richard Sweden, and I'm chairing today. And perhaps I could invite my colleagues to introduce themselves. Kay.
Thank you, Chair. Kay Isa, Councillor for Chingford Green Ward.
Okay, and Raja.
Councillor Raja for High Street Ward.
Thanks very much. And Chris has introduced himself very ably already. Donya.
Hi, Chair. Donya Kalantari, Solicitor Legal Services. Thank you, Chair.
And Susan.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Susan Ferguson, Licensing Officer.
And Simon, who is the applicant.
Yes, hi, I'm Simon, obviously representing Burnt Bay Spirits. Hi.
Okay, and then we have other persons. I didn't quite follow the list, Chris, when you asked if everybody was there, but I'll ask people who are in order of my list, and if for any reason anyone's not there or not on my list, they could then introduce themselves afterwards. So, Lena Weber-Reed.
I've got an email from Lena saying that she might be unable to attend this meeting. So.
Okay, and Charlotte Kavanagh.
Hello, Charlotte Kavanagh is unable to attend, and my name is Magdalena Guzik, and I'm attending on her behalf.
Oh, thank you. I was slightly confused there because there was a Lena and a Magdalena.
Yeah.
Thanks very much. Carl.
Hi, yeah, I'm here. I'm a local resident.
Thank you. And Sarah, who might be related to Carl.
Yes, I am married to him. Hi, my name is Sarah England. I'm a resident at Taylor House opposite the premises.
Thank you. And Phil. Do we have Phil?
I don't think Phil is with us currently.
He's not with us. No. And Yasmin Haji.
Hi, yep, I'm here and I'm a local resident.
Thank you. And James, on behalf of Ashish Nandi, I believe.
It's actually Ashish Nandi on behalf of James, and I'm here.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ashish, for that. So, now, would Donya care to outline the procedure?
Thank you, Chair. We'll proceed by way of agenda item 3 on page 7 of the agenda pack. The licensing officer will present their report. The chair will then call for all parties to present their case. We will begin with the applicant, and this will be followed by questions. Then the other parties will have an opportunity to present their case, and this will also be followed by questions. The chair will then call for all parties to sum up their case. We'll begin with the other parties and then the applicant. The subcommittee will then retire to make its decision, and the decision will be given with full reasons within 5 working days via a letter that Christopher Foxton will post parties. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Donya. I just realised that I didn't ask if there are any declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest? I haven't got any. No? Raja? No. Okay. Just in order to that we've been correct. Thanks very much. Would Susan now like to present the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. An application for the grant of a premises licence has been received from the Burnt Faith Spirits Limited, where the applicant seeks the proposed as following. The sale of alcohol on and off the premises and hours open to the public. Monday to Thursday, 11 a.m. to midnight. Friday and Saturday, 11 a.m. until 0100 in the morning. Sunday, 11 a.m. until 22:30. During the consultation, the licensing service received 21 representations from other persons, one of which was in support of the application, and another from the responsible authority premises licensing, relating to the prevention of public nuisance and the prevention of crime and disorder licensing objectives. The applicant has subsequently agreed to the conditions suggested by the premises licensing section, who withdrew their representation. Such conditions may be included within the premises license if the license is granted. See Appendix E. The original committee hearing date was on the 9th of March 2022 and was postponed as requested by the applicant. Prior to the hearing, the applicant held a meeting for the local residents. 5 out of the 20 representations received attended, plus 4 others who heard by word of mouth of the residents' meeting. The applicant provided a handout informing the business plan and his experience in this area of retail. There were no other representations from the other responsible authorities, and a full copy of the application can be found at Appendix A to the report. After giving due consideration to the representations made and taking into account the views of the applicant, and after giving due regard to the amended guidance issued under Section 182 of the Licensing Act and the Council's own Statement of Licensing Policy, the committee is respectfully asked to determine whether the application for a premises licence should be granted in full, granted in part, or refused. Thank you, Chair. You're on mute, Chair.
Yes, sorry, there's not much extraneous noise here, but I thought I'd cut it out. Thank you very much, Susan, for that. We now move on. By the way, the running order, for those that have it, the running order is on it's on page 7 of the pack for any of our visitors who are seeking to keep tabs on how we go from one item to the next. So I'd now like to ask Simon to present his case, after which there'll be questions from the committee, and since there are no responsible authorities, there can be questions from the other persons of other visitors today. I don't know, you might wish to, you might not wish all to ask questions, which you have an entitlement to do. It might be better to focus the questions with 1 or 2 of you asking, but just for the convenience sake of the way that the proceedings go ahead. So Simon, please, let's hear all about your application.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so I just thought it was best to try and concisely summarise the application for you, just to allow the committee to have the full extent and the context around the application and the way in which we're going to operate the site, and obviously why we require the premise licence in the first place. As Susan alluded to, and it's obviously within the pack there, that we did call a residents' meeting on the 7th of March to take the residents through a lot of the information about the company and what our aims were and what we were trying to achieve. And can I just say that I thought that the residents were incredibly respectful on the night, and they listened to what I had to say. And also, I've got to say, from my perspective, I too acknowledge that, their initial concerns and, why they would have them. And hopefully towards the end of this, we can suggest some further, discussion points on how we, might improve it for them. I hope that I hope by doing that, it's given the neighbours and the residents a bit more confidence about the business and about what we're trying to achieve. And I think that my experience in this field means that I understand how important it is to work alongside your residents, both commercial residents, obviously, because there are commercial residents on the road, and obviously residential residents, of which obviously there are many, and there will be more in due course, especially once the new housing estate over the behind the premises is built as well. I think there's an extra 390 odd flats going on behind that as well. So I did stress at the meeting that I've been in a situation before where I've inherited a license with one of my previous businesses where there has been problems with residents, and in all honesty, it made my life very difficult. And I think through a lot of hard work, we managed to solve that. But it's certainly not how I'd want to start the relationship here. So in terms of what we're going to do now, what I'd like to do is just give you a bit of information about the company, and then I'll go through some of the 4 licensing objectives and summarize those for you and summarize some further suggestions. So who are we? Who's Burnt Faith? So Burnt Faith is going to be the UK's first commercial brandy distillery, which obviously is quite a cool and hopefully quite a big thing to bring to Walthamstow. And obviously I actually live in Leighton myself, so I'm a local resident, and as soon as I had this idea to create this business, it was very much my intention to try and keep it in the borough, obviously a borough which I have a lot of admiration for, and obviously given that Walthamstow very much now is starting to become a place for creative and artisan types of businesses, that I probably didn't see a better place to try and find a venue to put the distillery than Walthamstow. So what experience do I have in running a premise license? Well, I had a previous cider business which held a premise license for 6 years. I actually started that business in the borough as well. I had a railway arch in Forest Gate in 2014 on Winchelsea Road, which is part of the borough, and I operated that as a new kind of premise license in a very heavy residential neighbourhood without any problems. And I hope it was something that was good for the area, and certainly something that became a bit of a local hub for those residents. I also had a pub in the area as well, so you guys should know. I brought back to life a pub called the Leighton Tavern off Market Road in E11 in Leighton. So again, we operated that and still do operate it very successfully. And I actually went on to get a successful extension on that license a couple of years back as well. So again, hopefully that kind of goes to prove that I've got some experience in running premise locations in heavy residential areas and running them well. Why have I applied for a premise license here? Well, first of all, I hope I made this kind of clear to the residents as well. We are a manufacturing business, and we are a business that will have light industrial use in the space predominantly. So we're obviously making spirits and making brandy, which is obviously a distillation of wine, which is obviously seasonal as well. So it's mainly operating the distillery part between kind of November and May. And obviously, as a manufacturer of spirits, we have to have a premise license in order to be able to sell the alcohol we make. Obviously, without the premise license, in theory we can't operate out of that site at all. So that would be a no-go for us coming to the site at all if we couldn't operate the premise license. And as you will see by our plans, we do have space upstairs. It's roughly about 1,000 square foot of space, which is designated as a tasting room space for our visitors, and also is a tasting room, yes, but also it is what you would call a bar as such. It will be serving drinks and obviously serving our brandy. And this again is, in my experience, an essential part of the business, because in today's in today's world, customers want to be able to sit and enjoy the product that you're making downstairs, and it's very much, as we would have seen it, akin to the breweries that are on the Black Horse Road estate on the other side, where they have a tap room or a drinking space that is, to kind of, enhance and also make the company commercially viable as well. Why have I picked that road, and why have we picked that site? As I was explaining to the residents, the big part of it was actually the yard space. So there is a 2,500 square foot yard space next to the facility, as well as the facility already having a lot of the kind of utilities that we need to operate effectively. The yard space, in my view, meant that we would be able to load and unload and operate really without any kind of impact and any effect on residents in terms of cars and parking. And I know this isn't a car parking meeting or whatever, but just to kind of give some context there. Walthamstow is obviously one of the first places to have this creative enterprise zone as well within London, which Sutherland Road fits within that. So from my perspective, very much an area that we as a business would want to be in, and we obviously, as the council are, obviously quite supportive of these kind of startup founder businesses like we are, that we would want to go there. I think as well that I completely acknowledge that there has to be a balance between these type of businesses like mine, and also which obviously are trying to attract new jobs and create new jobs and things like that, and also the housing and the housing kind of crisis that is already exists within all boroughs. And I understand that there's a very kind of complex way of trying to balance new businesses and things like that, and also the residents. So I guess that that's something that we are very much aware of, and the harmony of those two things is really, really important. And as much as like all my other places, I saw this. And I saw the venue with all the new residential buildings there, having space for people to mix as a community, I think is incredibly important to me, not just, from a commercial point of view, but also just from a kind of existence point of view, that if you're going to go into a community, that you make it somewhere that the community can use, because as we know, as these kind of as these residential blocks go up and things like that, space for people to be able to mix and communicate and enjoy events and have all that kind of stuff is really important, and they're necessary spaces as well. So I very much hope that this space operates as a part of the community. Not only that, it's about employing people as well, and employing local people as well. So we will be looking to employ up to 10 or 15 people in the distillery itself. So again, hopefully that's something which is good. So look, I think so that's kind of the context, and now going into like kind of a condensed version of like the 4 main licensing objectives and providing a bit more context around that. So in terms of preventing crime and disorder, as well as our initial self-applied conditions, I won't go through them all, obviously bore people to tears, but everyone can review those. The licensing department, Susan and her colleagues, came back with some further amends to that. That was mainly around the CCTV and about detailed CCTV and keeping track of things like that. For us, that's an absolute we were absolutely fine with that, and perhaps I should have recommended that myself at the beginning. So I completely understand that clear, visible CCTV has a great impact on the behaviour of patrons in and outside the venue, which, again, in my experience, goes to prove that what kind of good effect they can have. In terms of public safety, I don't think there was too much to add here, as it didn't seem really that was an area of concern for either the council or any of the residents when we met up per se directly, apart from parking. Again, this isn't and kind of cars and stuff in and around the road, which again, this isn't necessarily applicable to the licensing application. Then moving on to the prevention of public nuisance. I think this is an area that is very important now that we concentrate a little bit on, and I'll try and be as clear as I can here. We had initially one of the things that we'd initially proposed is that all customers will be asked to leave quietly, and I completely acknowledge now that that wasn't enough to stipulate that. As you all know, a couple of weeks ago I proposed a new dispersal policy. This dispersal policy is one that has been adopted and adapted through my previous experience, running premises where there's again lots of residents, and I think the dispersal policies and the effectiveness of the way that you put them into effect and the way you action them, they can be incredibly good tools to use. So that is something that I can I've obviously added to our application, and something that we would very much enforce from day one. I won't go into it, Chair. Do you need me to go into that? That's in terms of the in and outs of that. I mean, that's been something for people to see for the last couple of weeks. Do I need to go into any more detail on dispersal policy?
Well, just highlight anything that you think needs to be highlighted, and anything that you think that we and the other people in the hearing might wish to emphasise. But
well, yeah, that's fine. I mean, perhaps this mitigates it somewhat. So I can do that. But I think one of the concerns that the neighbours had, and a thread and a kind of thread that runs through the objections is the initial concerns about opening times, and I can understand that there is obviously a fear of the unknown, and obviously how that this will affect local residents and affect their lives. So in that vein, I would like to propose to the committee that we would be willing to take an hour away from each of the weeknights and weekend applications. So 11 p.m. close on the week and 12 on weekends. For me, as well as the dispersal policy, as well as kind of policing and managing drinking up time and the way that we manage people leaving the premises. I think that hopefully this is will be a mitigating factor. That application is kind of fits in line with the nearest premise license to us, I think, which is the Black Horse Workshop that currently operates under those times. So I would like to propose that we do that. It was never really my intention, I have to say, that we would ever be working necessarily to those times of 12 and 1 o'clock in the application, but again, in my experience, giving yourself a bit of leeway in terms of times for any events or whatever, or just as I say, in terms of dispersal and drinking up time, that can always be pretty beneficial to have that on your side rather than not. But again, as I say, I'm willing to kind of show that flexibility there, and also in terms of the smoking area, which is one of the suggestions that the council made in terms of restricting us to 5 people smoking outside the premises. I would also like to propose that we could try and mitigate those 5 people as well by trying to have a designated area at much towards the back of the premises, within the courtyard of the site, which will again, hopefully take any kind of, if there is any travelling noise from those people, is moving them to the back of the premises. All right, because as I said, throughout this proposal, that it's my intention to work alongside the council and the residents, and certainly not against them, because as I said, it will just not be a conducive business, and it's not going to work for us if we always have the the looming kind of threat of a license revoke or a kind of going through an appeal process. We're looking at investing hundreds of thousands of pounds into the site and obviously into the area as well, and it's just not in our it's just not in our mindset to kind of go into it with that hanging over our heads. And lastly, the protection of children from harm. Sorry, just the last objective point. The council asked us to be stricter and more overt with Challenge 25, and again, we've got no issues with this. And that's something in which we completely accept as a recommendation from the council. So as I say, in summary, that's us. That's what we propose to do. That's how we want to start off, and that's how we want to work with everybody. And I welcome any questions from the committee.
Thanks very much for that, Simon. Could I just ask for clarification that you were proposing knocking an hour off all the closing times?
Yeah, that's right. So weekday Monday to Thursday would be closing at 11, and then Friday and Saturday closing at 12. And then, sorry, to be specific, I can understand the confusion. We would leave Sunday as it is. Sorry, just to be 10:30. I think it's 10:30.
10:30 Sunday. So that Sunday stays as it is. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you for clarifying that. I'll now move to questions from members of the subcommittee. Kay, do you have any questions?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Simon, because I had more questions, but you sort of answered quite a few of them. I just wanted to know how many staff you will be having to the closure time. That's one of them. And how did you reassure your residents when you had the meeting with them? Were they happy? Did they come away happy? How did you reassure them about all their concerns? And the capacity of your premises, I'm not sure if I've read it, but I can't remember. How many people do you expect on Fridays and Saturdays specifically? Thank you, Simon.
Yeah, so to add your first question, the actual upstairs area isn't that big. As I said, it's only about 1,000 square feet. So we would have, I would say, around 3 to 4 staff on. Of which part of the dispersal policy would be that one of those would be monitoring people as they left. So you always have one general manager who's doing everything else, and a few that are a couple cleaning up, and then one who's looking at who's monitoring people leaving the premises. Your other question is about what did the residents feel? I guess if I'm being honest, I can't answer that. They'll have to answer that themselves. I would say that, as I alluded to at the start of my presentation, that I got a sense from them that it wasn't there wasn't a massive objection to us per se as a business, more about the concerns around concerns around kind of drunken disorderly behaviour. Kind of being on their doorstep, so to speak. As I said in my presentation, I can only kind of draw on my past experience and my and again my desire to not have a relationship with residents that is that starts off bad and gets worse, because I've done this before. I just don't need the stress. None of us need the stress of it, right? So I was very clear that I gave that was an option. Really, is that I don't want to go in. I'd rather not go into it, because in that on that basis, I really want to make it somewhere for the community. And your last question, sorry, was.
I mean, how many the capacity of your premises? For instance, at the weekends, how many people, like customers, will you be expecting, or do you usually get? Could you get? So you don't have to be exact.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we haven't, we haven't opened yet. It's fairly difficult to kind of call. I mean, I would see that we were probably looking at around 50 to 75. Is probably the number that we would want to have up there. Again, I would stress that the nature of what the room is and what the whole distillery is, it's not a beer swigging, lads, kind of occasion. It is a, the idea is that it is very sophisticated and around what we're trying to make, which is a kind of a luxury product, and that would come across very much in the presentation and what we're trying to do in there. So it'd be very much, I would expect, a very mixed crowd in the sense of males and females. We're not going to be pulling pints in there. That isn't what we're trying to do. And in general, the reason why I chose there as well was because I wanted it to offer something very different from the multiple breweries and stuff that the area already has as well. So this was to offer something as a different complementary rather than being, again, basically a repetition of what was already there.
Okay.
All right.
So just going back to my first question again, sorry, Chair. I know you said I've got to ask the residents, which I will later, but how did you assure them that you will be dealing? What do you intend to do about their concerns?
Yeah, well, hopefully I've addressed those. In the action so far, is that I've issued a dispersal policy, which wasn't in the initial application. I've reduced. I've offered to reduce the opening times, which I know was a concern for the residents. So in terms of offering the thing around the moving people, any smokers, to the back of the facility, because as I say, it's quite a deep facility in the sense of moving those more towards the back rather than having them on the pavement out the front. Those were the initial kind of practical concerns, and then hopefully I gave them some confidence in my my experience, and that them seeing me and what the business is trying to do. Hopefully that's given them some degree of confidence as well. But like all these things, I accept that the only way that I can actually, they're all words, like the only way we can prove it is by our actions. So I guess that's just, I hope we get the opportunity to prove it in actions rather than just words.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Simon, and thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Raja, do you have any questions?
Yes, I would like to know from them that when people are drinking, they are leaving 11 o'clock, but on the weekend especially, they are leaving 12 o'clock. Have they got anybody from the SIA who's looking over them and what they're doing, the security, I mean? Or second thing is that do they have CCTV which can see and they can control that if there is a trouble, where is trouble? Third thing, when people are leaving at night time, what about the noise to the local community? Those are there. So what they have done about it?
Sorry, can you just say the last point again? I didn't pick that up. Sorry.
I said when the people are leaving, when the premises are closed, and obviously there will be a noise. What you are going to do about it? That if there's any noise and people complaining, those are living nearby.
Yeah. Okay. Let's take them one by one. So the first point is around SIA, which is for those that don't know, is basically a security doorman. I'll be honest. My initial proposal wasn't to have a doorman because I didn't feel that it was that type of place where we would need one. Like if I reference some of the other sites I've been to, I haven't seen SIA in some of the other local sites, which seem to manage them quite well. Look, I'll be honest with you, if it's something that you say we would have to have, then we would obviously just need to look at the commerciality of it. But again, drawing on my experience of effective dispersal policies with, the right staff and the right staff training, that I feel that realistically they have as much legal kind of standing in dispersing people as SIA do. SIA, you can't kick people down the road. You can only manage them effectively to move on and move away from the premises, which effectively answers your last question as well. Is that we're very much, we're a little bit on our own in that location, so it's not like we've got crowds of, if you want to come to Burnt Faith, you have to make that decision to go there. It's not really like a passing thing. And I think that the dispersal policy and the way that you mitigate the number of people that leave and how many people leave at, staggering the leaving times that people leave, again, in my experience, that really helps to mitigate the noise. And your other question was about CCTV. So the CCTV part, the council, as I said, they have asked us to up the CCTV that we have throughout the premises, and I completely agree with that. So that would be inside, outside, looking up the road, looking down the road. That to us is something that we were gonna do, but I didn't do a very good job of stipulating that on my initial application. But we would certainly make sure that the CCTV was very much on show, so people know that they're on film. And I do find again that really does mitigate people's behaviour.
Thank you, Simon.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Simon. Yes, following on from Kay's question, I'd just like to press you a bit more on the number of patrons that you expect, in that you've said that it's 1,000 square feet, which is 33 1/3 square yards. And you said that perhaps 50 to 75. 75 in there would be quite crowded, wouldn't it?
I don't think so, but you're asking me to come up with a capacity number on an unoperating site. So I'm just trying to give you, probably again in my experience, square footage versus amount of people. That to me is what I feel is an effective number, because 1,000 square feet, you can fit a lot of seating in 1,000 square feet. You can fit a lot of sixes in 1,000 square foot. There
will be seating, will there, largely?
Absolutely. Oh no, absolutely. Like there is, again, just to reiterate, this isn't a pub. This is effectively there to enhance the experience of the distillery. And as I said, this is about high-end experience. It's not lager. So everything will be sat down.
Okay, that kind of, I mean, if people have to seat, that more or less assuages my concern. I just did a fag packet calculation, and I thought 2 people to a square yard, if you were standing up, is quite intimate. If you were up to 75, if you could imagine, if we were actually meeting in person, we could all have stood in a square yard and would see what it looked like, but we can't. No. But I just put that with you, and I take on your remarks about high-end high-end stuff, and I'm a great fan of Carlos Primer. So if we do grant a license, I shall be comparing your produce with that particular beverage, with which you might be familiar.
Yes.
Are you proposing to have any music?
We're proposing to keep within inside the act. Yeah. So the idea is that we will have background music, and that's about it. We're not there. This isn't a it's not
which will stop at 11.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. Thank you for the proposal about closing time. You did mention drinking up time, and when I looked at the application, it appeared that closing time was exactly the same as the end of the alcohol license.
Yeah, I've just, again, that's just how I've always done it. Yeah, that's how I've always done it. If we need to amend that and make the opening times of the venue later than the licensing times, then that's obviously something for us to,
Bearing in mind the representations that have been made, I was thinking of making the alcohol times a little earlier than the closing times, but the principle is the same. Quite often there's I'm old enough to remember drinking up time, which was always too short, and people would line up their drinks it was 10 minutes, I think.
Yeah. I just feel in my experience that it helps with the dispersal policy a little bit, and again, I think the nature of the way that it works, and the proximity of the venue near to the tube stations and things like that. I just think that it's I think that it's manageable. Yeah.
Yep. Were you saying that it helps with dispersal not to have drinking up time, or to have it?
Well, again, this is like what is, as you just alluded to, what is drinking, like what is classed as drinking up time? You know what I mean? Like we would certainly look to give the notice, or we're not going to have a bell anymore. You don't really have bells, do you, anymore? But we would certainly look to make sure that we call that early, but people are still able to finish their drinks before the place closes. So we would make sure, we would just want to give ourselves that flexibility. As I said, the intention isn't to run a late night venue. That's not our intention. It's make everything manageable.
Yeah. But my point was one of you mentioned drinking up time, and sometimes there's drinking up time. And when do you envisage the deliveries taking place?
So actually,
I'm also curious to know where the wine's going to come from.
Well, that's obviously, I would love to spend another meeting with you highlighting all that to you, but the policy is that because the nature of what it is this is not one of the residents made a point in the representation towards like how a gin distillery works, where they are basically operating production of the product every week, right? Because they're bringing in alcohol in drums every week to make gin. When you're making brandy, it's not like that. What we will have bigger deliveries of wine less often. So if the wine is coming from Spain, Italy, France, or England, then that comes in tankers. And those tankers are unloaded in our courtyard, which, again, that's one of the reasons why I wanted the site, is because we can reverse and we can park it in the courtyard without affecting anybody. We can unload in. So what that essentially means is that we will have deliveries between November and, probably getting towards the back end of February and March, with the distilling most likely all done and finished by kind of May time. So in fact, the site then becomes, from a distillery point of view, it's then just about research and development and aging and blending in between that period when we're then going to start distilling again. So it is very different process and production from a typical like gin distillery, which everybody, I guess, kind of rightly so, paints with the same brush, you know, how they work. So that's the way. So we would probably have a delivery probably every couple of weeks.
Oh, right, okay. But that would normally be during the daytime, I take it.
100%.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for that. Will you be serving any other drinks?
Yeah, we will be serving we will serve. You know, as I said, it's not beer. It's not a beer swilly. So we will serve like other spirits. You know, we will serve non-alcoholic products, obviously. You know, to cater for everybody that comes in, because I assume not everybody, although we're trying to convert people to become, you know, sophisticated brandy drinkers. Not everybody is going to be that. But there is no plans to have a cellar. So there's no plans to have like pouring beer. You know, if we do a beer, it'll be like a bottle, like one bottle. You know, do you know what I mean? Like 330ml bottle of beer. It's not going to be pints or anything like that.
Okay. Thanks for that. And the tap room's going to be on the first floor.
Yes, correct.
Did I get that correctly?
Yeah.
Had you thought about disabled access?
Yes. So we, again, you know, if this all goes ahead, we will look at how we can, what we can put in to give, to put in disabled access, i.e. lift.
Okay, thanks. Oh, right. Okay, that's very good news. Roughly what, in terms of your business model, what percentage do you think will be on sales, and what percentage of your sales will be off sales? And
I would classify off sales as like within off sales would basically be like everything else, i.e. sale to supermarkets and, you know, consumers, you know, etc. And on premise would be obviously just what's consumed on site. It would probably be around 5% would be on site.
Oh, okay. Right.
So small.
And would you be happy to provide a phone number and the email address and other means of communication were your neighbours to become aware of any disturbance?
That's actually a great point, Chair. That's something I've missed off. Like, again, that now you remind, that is something that we've had that works very well in the past. You know, so somebody can just send a text to the general manager or somebody or whatever if they're not happy with anything. So yes, that's a great point. We're more than happy to do that, of course.
Okay, that's all my questions, and thanks very much. Apart from, do you know where you can get Carlos Primer? Because I've only ever found it in Spain. I'll
find out, and I'll send you a separate note on that, Chair. Can I ask? I don't know if it's for me or for the residents. You know, is there a way that we concisely keep the residents' questions together for a couple of people, or will everyone?
Well, I have asked that, but I don't propose to censor any of the residents' questions.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
But I might intervene if there's a great deal of repetition in the questions.
Yeah, fine. Absolutely.
So. Now it's the chance of you, the residents, the other persons who are here to ask questions. After you've asked the questions, you have the opportunity to make your case. And if I could say that those two, there should be a difference in emphasis. So if you could bear that in mind, there might be some things where you just want to make a point, and you could perhaps save that up for when you're making your case. But these are now questions for Simon. So I don't know who wishes to start. Have you decided amongst yourself if there's a major spokesperson, or do you all want to ask questions?
So I don't think there is a spokesperson, because we're all individuals, and I thought we're from different areas within Paper Mill Place and surrounding areas. I myself have just 2 points, so if I could just go first, because I'm at work and I think I might have to pop off.
All right, sorry, I can't see who you are, but
so it's Yasmin. You don't need my
okay. Thank you. Yes, Yasmin, please go ahead then with your 2 questions.
Excellent. So just to kind of get, maybe perhaps the panel doesn't know, the makeup of the area, the residents are predominantly low income. So it's majority housing associations. So the reasoning around something for the community, I have to ask the question, well, how much is this actually for the community? If you're on the low income, you're not going to be buying, well, I'd assume you wouldn't be buying high-end brandy spirits and so forth. So that concerns me a little. I would prefer if the council, and this is not for Simon, to have put something there that actually helped the community, a youth centre, a space for local people, some other sort of community initiative, which has again been missed by the council, but that's for another day. The issue on safety, I did actually bring that up on my reasoning as to why I don't think the establishment should be open. I myself have 2 daughters. I know that area very well. So on one side, you've got factories and the other side is residential. It's a hub for drug dealing. Going down that alleyway, there are 2 separate alleyways that go into something called a pocket park. It is dangerous. There are drunks there and there is drug dealing. So I understand that outside the property there will be CCTV, but the problem is further down the road where it does become dangerous. Now, the police have been involved in the area. Our councillor Bellamy does know of the issues in the area, and I can't really see anything that's been put in place, and perhaps again not for Simon, perhaps more for the council, that can support local residents, because, you know, from Simon's perspective, he only has to deal with what's going on outside his premises. And this is a question directly to Simon. You talked, again, I'm going to mention, you mentioned somewhere for the community, and you talked about employment. And one of the things, I'm assuming that you are going to be granted this license here, albeit with some edits. Would you consider hiring people from the area, you know, looking at the backgrounds, the lower socioeconomic, perhaps thinking about apprenticeships for our community, and perhaps also thinking about providing some of that massive space you have for community events, and maybe even, and I'm not asking for large sums of money, but funding some of the local initiatives. We have the Higham Hill Hub, a local community centre, which is doing amazing work. I'm not a part of it. Cycling with the kids, there used to be homework clubs, there's lots of cooking, gardening, and if you really want to be part of the community, you've got to engage and provide the space, and sometimes even provide funding where you can. That's my representation.
Thanks. Look, as I said at the beginning, like you can only be able to judge me on what we do rather than just what I say. So when I obviously say I want to be a part of the community, and I said this at our meeting, that involves all forms of involvement, because it altruistically it's good, but obviously it's good for everybody if we do that. And, you know, as you pointed out, you know, employing local residents is, of course, that's the reason why we're there. You know, that in terms of the way the site operates and being able to have people to come and learn a skill and learn a really, really difficult kind of skill like distilling, you know, from an apprenticeship point of view, is absolutely, you know, on our agenda, and that's what we did in our previous businesses. And as you also said about how we support local people and local events, like, yeah, we want, you know, as I said, I'm a Wolf, you know, I live in Leighton. I understand the area, you know, I understand the people in the area. It's certainly something I want to help us try and put the area on the map and create more commerce in the area, and therefore we will undoubtedly be able to work with the local residents on things like, you know, as you say, like fundraising events and things like that. And when I say about, you know, it being a space for local residents, I sincerely mean that, because yeah, I understand that, you know, as a brand, obviously what we're trying to create is, we are, you know, I can't lie about that. We want to create something that is, you know, is seen as cool and with a great vibe and high end or whatever. But I don't think that has to be at the exclusion, and it won't be at the exclusion of local residents, because as I said in my meeting, if we don't all get on and we don't all have a really good understanding of the way that we're all operating, then it just won't ever work. So you know, I really, you know, I am trying to be as clear and sincere as I can to say that we want to be part of the community. That's it.
Thank you very much, Yasmin, for those questions. I'll go through the my list of people who are here then and ask if you wish to ask any questions. Sorry, Lena has given apologies, hasn't she?
Yes.
Yeah. And Magdalena is here in place of Charlotte. Magdalena, would you like to ask any questions?
Yes, hello. I wanted to know about the public safety. I disagree with Simon about the fact that public safety was not mentioned or raised at the residents' meeting. One of the things I think is crucial is the fact that I don't understand why there is a distinction between drinking beer and drinking brandy. Alcohol is alcohol. My background is in hospitality, and I know that alcohol intoxicates people regardless of what it is that they drink. So therefore, drunk and disorderly is public safety, especially for women and children. Majority of women who are out, according to statistics in and around London, do say that they are harassed by drunk and disorderly, mainly men. The place that the premises is located and the route to it to get from the nearby Black Horse Road station is directly on a path going through Black Horse Mews, which is a narrow pathway, which is very quiet in the evenings, because this is a very much of a residential area, and any businesses that already exist here are closed after, like within the normal working hours, sort of 5-6 p.m. So returning from anywhere and having to face clients, patrons coming out, and let's not pretend that brandy is any way better alcohol than anything else. Like I said, it intoxicates people equally as beer or vodka or anything else. So dealing with something like returning back home and having to face on these narrow paths patrons from Burnt Faith at midnight, where we know the police is already heavily underfunded, having to deal with that as a woman, and I know Charlotte made exactly the same representation in her email, as a woman of this building, the resident of this building, I would say 100% of the flats in Taylor House are occupied by at least one woman, with plenty of women under the age of 18. I feel like this is definitely a public safety issue, having a premises that's open late every day, so close to our building. That would be the first representation that I'm making. The second representation is again around public nuisance, which is noise.
We are supposed to be on questions at the moment. I let that go.
Okay, so my question is, how is this going to be dealt with? How is this not against public safety?
So
have you got another question?
Yes, another question is, what about the noise from glass disposal? I'm assuming the bottles that are going to be used are going to be disposed of in some way, and I know how much noise that creates. Like I said, it does come from my hospitality background. It's extremely noisy. That's the second question. Third question is around smoking. Just because you put someone at the back of the building doesn't stop the noise traveling upwards. You can still hear everything that's going on the street level, even if you're on the 4th floor. Most of the bedrooms overlook the Sutherland Road, causing disturbance at night, and this building gets incredibly hot at night. It's not possible not to have the windows open in summer, so that's already an issue. So that's again, third question, how are you going to mitigate the noise from smoking? And the fourth question is, which property, Simon, you mentioned that there is a property or a business that is somewhere in the Black Horse Road workshop area that's open similarly to the hours that you're proposing. And I'm not sure which place that is, because there's only a cafe and a workshop itself, and both of them close before 8 o'clock in the evening. So these are my questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Simon.
Yes, just to kind of come back to you on the public safety thing, in terms of, and you know, you have to unfortunately have gone through this a few times to understand the difference. Public safety versus what you're talking about, I believe, and the chair and the committee are willing to step in and tell me I'm wrong, but I think what you're talking about is more about prevention of crime and disorder than actual what is deemed within the licensing objectives as a public safety problem. So when I was saying to you that public safety wasn't necessarily something that was an issue, it was more around about what we do to mitigate, like things like emergency exits, safety maintenance, and things like that, as opposed to what you're talking about is, I understand, is prevention of crime and disorder. So you know, that's not to, you know, I'm just putting it into the correct buckets. I understand your problem is still the same nonetheless. You know, I understand again that alcohol, as you say, alcohol is alcohol when you've worked in hospitality, but you know, again, from my point of view, I will tell you that, well, I will pull on my experience, is that what you sell and the way you sell it does define more so your audience. You know, as I said, you know, I would strongly argue that what we are doing and the way we're going to do it is it will pull in a different audience, perhaps, to what I would class as a brewery which is selling, like, you know, where the aim is to sell a lot, as opposed to what we're doing, where the aim is not to sell a lot, it's to sell better. So I would just kind of, you know, disagree a little bit there about alcohol as alcohol. But I understand that it gets intoxicated. I do kind of understand what you're saying on that point of view. And again, you know, I can only kind of, you know, put on my experience from the area, and you know, and say that, you know, that we will do what we can to mitigate, you know, the problems that you know, any problems that will come from our premises. We unfortunately can't mitigate what people do, and the type of people or person that comes into our establishment or any establishment. You know, who they are and the way they act is very much down to them as an individual, and it's not something that we as a business really have control on in that sense. You know, I think we all react differently when we have a drink, and you know, I think the concerns that you've got about, you know, being a female and, you know, and being kind of, you know, not feeling safe in the area, you know, is probably a wider point and a wider concern that, you know, needs addressing in Walthamstow and everywhere. And I wouldn't say it's a particularly comes down to like one establishment or one person. I think that's a general issue, and that needs to be, rightly so, needs to be addressed. So that's what I would kind of say to the point there. In terms of number two, you're saying about the bottles. So the council, the licensing department, stipulated one of the things they wanted to see is that we didn't unload any glasses after 11 or before 8 a.m. So that was one of the, you know, that was one of the that was one of the things that the council suggested after our application. If the council decide, or, you know, the council decide that they want us to amend that to any earlier, you know, that's fine. I've got no objections to when we put the bottles out or what time we put out that, if it helps and mitigates any issues. The smoking part, you know, 5 people, you know, that we have to have an area that people smoke, because obviously smoking is not allowed inside. So we have to have an area where people can smoke safely. and the council's initial suggestion was that it's only that it's mitigated to 5, and I hope and I believe that by helping to mitigate that and push people to the back, that we are trying to do as much as we can in terms of trying to mitigate any noise. I would probably argue on that noise and people noise is something that, again, is just being in London and being in a highly residential and commercial area is, again, just something that exists. And as I said in our residents meeting, the reality is on the site, one of the things that I know that we got the property on the basis of or over was looking at one of these 20-minute delivery firms, and I would probably argue that things like that, and that kind of building where which is kind of going to go at could go to somebody like that you've got noise going up and down the street with people delivering stuff 24/7, and that's probably something that nobody wants as well. And yeah, I think that was everything. Again, as I said, it's about us. It's about us showing. It's about us proving that we can do what we say we're going to do. That's
Chair, can I ask a question for clarification, please, before I go back on mute?
Yeah, well, if you want a point clarified, yeah.
Okay, so the license, once granted, it doesn't stipulate what type of alcohol you will be selling. So today we are being promised that brandy somehow attracts more sophisticated clientele, which in turn will create a more of a, luxurious environment around Burnt Faith distillery. However, that is only at the beginning. There's nothing that is stopping Burnt Faith from expanding their offer into different types of alcohol. And at that point, there's nothing that stops them from expanding the clientele that comes through the door. And to make a point around the breweries, none of the breweries that are in the local area are adjacent to any type of residential premises. Every single one of them is where it should be, which is an industrial area. So as much as you can make comparisons with the types of premises, it really doesn't work in this area, because when we purchased our flats in this building, it was based on it being residential. If I wanted to be near a brewery, I would purchase something on the Black Horse Lane, but that's not the case. So that was just my final comment around this. And that's my representation.
Okay. Thanks. I'm not sure that was a question or a clarification, but thank you very much.
Well, I want a clarification around the license. License doesn't stipulate the type of alcohol that's being sold. You can sell any type of alcohol. Is that correct?
I can take it as a question, Chair, because I understand the context of it.
Okay.
All I would say, and as Susan made the point at the meeting, is that as residents you have power, and your power would certainly be is if you don't think if as I've said quite a bit, if you feel that things are not going the way that that I said they were going to go, you have power to do things like call a hearing on the license and things like that. So again, I can sit here and you're right. I can sit here and say that, I'm going to be spending all this money on a brandy distillery. I'm not going to be making anything else because practically you can't. But you're not to, you've got to believe me in what I say. But the thing is, you do have power as local residents, and that's what I keep going back to. Is that it's important for me that we have, we work hard and we have the harmony of being there and working with you all, because otherwise our lives are made difficult, my life's made difficult, and your lives are made, and it just doesn't work for anyone. And I don't want to spend hundreds of thousands of pounds of investment into the site and into the area if you know, I've got this thing over my head that, you know, that we're going to, you know, that we're going to be called in, we're going to lose our license, and then suddenly the site can't operate. You know, I'd be very frank, and, you know, I think that hopefully just shows how, you know, passionate we are about it. I'd be very frank, that won't work for us.
Okay, thanks very much. Carl and Sarah, do you think you could ask some questions between yourselves?
I don't have questions. I have a representation though.
Okay, Carl.
Hi, no questions here, thanks.
No question. Phil.
Phil hasn't been able to join us yet.
Oh, sorry, I should have scored his name through. Yasmin has already been. Ashish.
Hi. Yeah, I do have a question. First question is, Simon has mentioned about having CCTV coverage. Just in terms of the technicalities of it, how much area is that CCTV going to cover? And my second question is, of course, we've talked a lot about, you know, the type of clientele that Burn Faith is going to attract because of the sophisticated nature of drinking brandy, which I do disagree with. However, we've also said, and Simon, you've said it yourself, that you can't mitigate what people do when they leave your premises, which is they could be littering, they could be vomiting, they could be doing all sorts of things once they get drunk. So a question really for the chair and for the committee is, so why are we increasing the probability of putting the residents in harm's way? So there are two questions for yourselves.
Well, obviously, I can only answer one of those then. The CCTV coverage in terms of meterage, I mean, look, what we would do, and what we've done at our previous premises, is one would look at the door, one would look down the road, and the other one would look down the other side obviously on the court, because we're on the corner there. You would have one that points in both directions as well as one that points on the door. So, you know, the one that points either way goes as far as you can, you know, as the camera can, you know, pick up. I can't give you a meterage coverage of the CCTV. I can only tell you in the direction that it would, you know, directions in which they would point, which would cover all angles essentially from the front of the premises.
And is that going to be a two-way system? So is there going to be audio as well as video, or is it just a video CCTV that you're proposing?
Typically, it's just visual.
Okay.
Thanks very much for that. And the committee isn't proposing anything. People have an entitlement to apply for a license, and our duty is to hear the application and the other representations. That's everybody. So thank you very much. Since there are no responsible authorities, then it's up to you all our visitors, that's everyone except Simon, to make a representation, after which Simon, or we and Simon, can ask you questions. Now, does Lena's not here? That's right, isn't it? And Magdalena kind of did make a bit of a representation. Have you got anything you want to add, Magdalena, at this point?
Yes, I think Simon missed one of the questions actually. Now going back, I wanted to know which other property was operating similar hours to the one that he was proposing, 11 and 12 p.m. in the Black Horse workshop, Black Horse Road workshop, and I didn't get the answer to that question. So if you could go back to that, please.
You're quite right, and I should have asked. It's possible. Simon, if you don't have that information to hand.
I was just looking at trying to find it again now. It is the Black Horse Road workshop. It is just what their license is. So that workshop there is the one I'm referring to. Yeah. So I'm just referring to what license they've been granted. Whether or not the hours that they operate obviously are completely down to them. I was just referencing what they've actually got as a license or been granted. That's all I can go by.
Perhaps I could add that as a subcommittee, we're not allowed to determine the hours of the license on the hours of similar premises. We have to look at each application on its own merits.
Yes, I just wanted to know what was being referenced, because I know that none of them are open until 11 or 12. So just wanted to fact checking and due diligence on my part.
Yeah, they might not open, but I understand
that.
We might be able to check, not during the hearing, but later we could check because we have the licensing team has a list of all the permitted hours, but it could be that they have a license that goes on to 11, which they just don't use. Okay.
I understand that. Thank you.
Chair. Sorry, this is Susan.
All right.
Hi. Blackwell's Workshop. Yeah, their hours, it's confirmed, Monday to Thursday to 2300, Friday and Saturday midnight, Sunday 23. So it's possibility that they just don't use those hours.
Thank you.
That is evidence that we were looking at it on its own merits and weren't looking at the hours roundabout. Okay. Thanks very much. Carl and Sarah, are you going to make a joint presentation or?
Yeah, like a double act.
Well, you indicated you wanted to, so please go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for listening to this representation. I have actually written something down. I've added a couple of notes to it, so bear with me. Okay, first of all, I'd like to say what an exciting business this is. UK's first commercial brandy distillery, a real coup for Waltham Forest, and I would happily be a patron. Sutherland Road is just a really odd place to put it. This area has an exceedingly successful beer mile at the other side of Blackhorse Lane that houses several breweries, tap rooms, and soon a winery. In the application, it erroneously states that the premises are at the end of a road of industrial-style buildings. It is, in fact, in the middle of a road of predominantly residential buildings with adjacent industrial units serving 3 businesses, none of which have consumer footfall, as they are all business to business. The Waltham Forest Development Brief for Sutherland Road states that these units are becoming increasingly incompatible with the area. Indeed, the Waltham Forest Licensing Officer mentions the construction of 349 homes behind the proposed distillery, and they will be affected too. Current and proposed residential blocks in and around Sutherland Road are a mix of social and affordable homes. There are many families with children, some with complex care needs. A distillery and drinking establishment will be incongruous within this setting. The increased nighttime activity can't help but be a nuisance. In 2017, the applicant opened a cider business, Hawk's Tap Room, in the Bermondsey Beer Mile. Like this, it was opposite residential buildings. There, like here, residents strongly objected to the application. It was granted nonetheless. Although I should mention that application included outdoor drinking. In 2019, the residents were able to get a review of the licence due to 2 years of enduring public nuisance. The licensing subcommittee minute stated the 6th of August 2019 stated that the noise prevented people sleeping and that patrons would enter the estate with their beer, leave human excrement, vomit and broken glass, which were regularly found on the estate. The applicant of the licensing hearing went on to explain that residents frequently leave their homes to escape the noise and antisocial behaviour at the weekend, and when at home are unable to open their windows, read a book, watch a film without hearing drunks shouting and competing to be heard over each other. Southwark Councillor Hamera Ali stated, I don't feel my residents' voices were heard, and whilst the complexity surrounding the laws put the committee in a difficult position, they could have tightened the conditions. Ultimately, Hawke's Taproom and another business were required to employ a street warden. The tasting room sounds rather couth and nothing like the aforementioned taproom. However, people still, so I'm repeating what Magda said because I think this is important. However, people who drink high-end spirits still get drunk. In resident handout, the applicant mentions celebrating life events. This suggests large groups of people getting drunk. I have worked also in high-end establishments where high-end people get absolutely smashed. Based on the residential nature of Sutherland Road and due to the problems with the applicant's other businesses, I would suggest licensing times of weekdays and Sunday, 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. and 11 to 11 on Friday and Saturday. Anything outside these times is unacceptable and would give rise to nuisance. I've written myself a note. I would also mention that the applicant was almost flippant about the mention of women's safety. I think that at the moment, women's safety is exceedingly important and everyone is responsible. Okay, thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Yasmin might have gone.
No, I'm still here.
Is there anything you want to say in terms of a presentation now?
I think hearing everything, Simon, and this is nothing personal, I just have not been persuaded on the issue of the safety of me and my daughters being able to walk down that street and not feel safer, because by bringing in those kind of people that everyone's spoken about before me, you are sadly increasing the risk of something happening to myself or my daughters. And I'm not saying that to be extreme. I'm saying that because we already have crime in the area and there's already been evidence of people being mugged or, you know, being shouted at, screamed at, blah, 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 and all the rest of it. So I'm really sorry, Simon. I'm going to have to maintain my position of not saying no to your establishment. And one of the other thing is, I do have to say, Richard, I do feel like you've been slightly biased towards Simon in the informal conversations that you've been having with him on alcohol. And so I just want to, just because it's making me feel uncomfortable, I just wanted to raise that.
Okay, well, I'm sorry that I've made you uncomfortable. I've always tried to make these proceedings relatively informal. That's the idea of having them when they were removed from the magistrates. Ashish, have you got any presentation you want to make?
Yes, certainly. And on behalf of James, and I want to second what Yasmin said. There has been a lot of enthusiasm for Brandy today. So I'm going to talk a little bit about public nuisance, public safety, and some of the areas in which the license will not meet its objective. So public nuisance, we don't need much of imagination to know. There are going to be issues around noise, antisocial behavior, vomiting, littering, and not to mention also the pollution caused by vehicles ferrying the customers in and out of this area, which has really not been thought about. It is at the moment, as Sarah has previously mentioned, there are some industrial units here, but they're not businesses which require their customers to frequent. And of course, by having a business like Burn Faith, where customers will be coming in and out every day, which is going to be increasing the number of vehicles in the area. And also this road is definitely a road which has got no traffic calming measures either. So just talking about what James wanted to say, James and Eddie, along with their young children, they live in a property which is facing directly opposite the premises which has been proposed by Burn Faith, and any noise nuisance coming from the business will disturb the sleep and negatively impact the development and performance of the children at school. This is something that's been completely ignored so far in all the conversations that we've had. And of course, noise nuisance is going to be inevitable. Customers are going going to be coming in and out of the premises. There are going to be taxis waiting outside. There's going to be drunk people, just being merry and jolly, if not being violent and disorderly as they're leaving the premises. So anybody with children can imagine what impact that can have on your children when they're trying to go to bed and there's some drunk people outside. As an example, James is also cited in his representation that just about 2 months ago, there were just 2 men drinking alcohol in front of 57 Sutherland Road, and the nuisance was so much that everybody facing the road had to shut their windows and basically just resolve to not having any fresh air coming in. And to give some context, James has also mentioned in his representation that Signature Brewery, which is just 400 meters away from Sutherland Road and Taylor House property, still causes the residents of Taylor House, significant amount of noise nuisance when they have events going on. This is just to give context of how the noise can travel. So we've talked about public nuisance. Let's just going on to public safety. Granting this license is inevitably going to cause public safety issues. What do members, you think is going to happen if a bunch of unruly customers are creating nuisance outside their homes? We will, of course, challenge them. And if that leads to altercations, if that leads to abuse, if that leads to assault, the responsibility will lie on the licensing authority for granting this license. And according to a research that was recently conducted by an independent institute of alcohol studies, between third and half of all service people, we're talking about professionals here, have suffered sexual harassment or abuse in the hands of intoxicated members of public. 78% of the police, 65% of ambulance staff, and 35% of emergency department consultants feel that they're at the risk of drunken assaults. So what chance do we ordinary citizens have? And by granting this license, the licensing authorities will be willingly putting us residents of Sutherland Road directly in harm's way, because, at the end of the day, it's us who is going to be, coming across this nuisance, and we will raise our opinion about it. There's been several members of the residents community that has already spoken about women's and girls' safety, young girls' safety, and I think that is a point that cannot be ignored either, especially given the location of the premises. And I want to also divert your attention towards protection of children from harm. Again, I don't believe that there's been enough attention given to this aspect. Now, the Borough of Waltham Forest has done a superb job in, building new houses and attracting a lot of young families and children to the area, especially around Sutherland Road. And if you walk around in this neighborhood, apart from winter months, you can see these children playing on the streets, on the pavements, riding the bikes, just having a good time with their friends. Of course, they're already at risk because there is a road directly opposite the place that they live. That's an unfortunate fact of life that they have to live with. And this road, of course, as I mentioned before, has no traffic calming measures either. But now if you add to this the fact that there's going to be a business which is going to require customers coming in and out of the premises, lots more vehicles coming in and out of the premises of this road here, we are simply just increasing the risk of these children's coming across road traffic accident. And you could put in traffic calming measures in place. You could have CCTV cameras, you could have speed breakers, but at the end of the day, we cannot control if someone is not going to be drunk driving. And by having a premises selling alcohol so close to residential area is just increasing that probability and therefore increasing the risk of children coming across a road traffic incident. So those are the points around public safety, public nuisance, and prevention. Sorry, I meant to say prevention of crime and disorder, public nuisance, and protection of children from harm as a part of our representation.
Okay, thank you very much. Do any of the members of the committee have any questions to ask on any of the representations they've heard?
Maybe one to Simon, Chair, please. Simon,
hang on. No, these are the questions that
sorry.
I can be flexible if everybody's in agreement. Yeah. I was. But these are questions on the representations we've heard from the other persons. But
sorry, Chair. Yes.
But if Simon, if everybody's happy for you to ask to rewind, then I can allow that. But not if anybody objects, because I don't want the hearing to be invalidated on a lapse of procedure.
Listen, my fault. My apologies, Chair. I did get that wrong, so no questions.
Are you sure? Okay.
Yeah, that's
Well, if nobody objects and Simon doesn't object, Simon, would you object to answering another question now?
No, Chair, no, I wouldn't.
You wouldn't. So it's okay. Do ask your question of Simon now.
Okay, thank you, Simon. No, it's just because obviously one area that got me my attention was the smoking area outside that could cause a noise nuisance and all that. Would Simon be happy to put a sign up outside to while people are smoking to be, you know, at their best behaviour? They just like to be silent and quiet. Would you be happy to put a sign up outside the smoking area?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course. I mean, I think it goes back to the point around staff and staff managing managing the impact of noise. So that's without question.
Thank you. That's all. Thank you, Chair.
Roger, have you got a question to ask?
No, thanks.
Simon, I have a question I want to ask, having heard the representations from Sarah England.
Yes, go for it. Yeah, I'm
sure? Okay.
More than happy to. Yeah.
Right. What assurance, bearing in mind the need for a review of the licence in the premises that I was told that you ran in Bermondsey, I think. What assurances can you give that a similar development won't take place with these premises?
Well, I can just to give a point of to give a clear point here. I sold my business to a company called Brewdog PLC in April 2018. Okay, so I was not that review and stewardship was not under my governance of the business. So I'm glad you brought that up, because I would like to reference that point, and I would also like to reference the point that I had two other licenses within Waltham Forest. One which, as I said, was at 361 Winchelsea Road in Forest Gate, which was bang in the middle of a neighbourhood which had no issues. And the other one was the Leighton Tavern, which again under Waltham Forest, which actually we got an extension of our premise licence to operate further hours. So as I said, I actually, and I believe this, was doing as much as I could during my period in Bermondsey and under Southwark Council to do a good job of mitigating it. And once the business was sold and it wasn't under my stewardship around how it was operating, how it was run, I wasn't in charge of the business anymore. So I have to make a clear representation there.
Thanks for that. So you were saying that the behaviours which gave rise to the review all started after you had ceased to run the business? No, what I would say is that there's a much broader point that Sarah brings up there, is that when she was talking about the issues within the actual context of that area, is that just to give you a bit of a very whistle-stop context, is that there are probably about 8 breweries and 1 pub on a stretch of railway arches that last about, I would say, 600 to 800 meters that are directly opposite. They're directly opposite a council estate, and that is the context around the reason why the neighbours, and in some respects rightly so, were so having those issues with all of the area, because it was it essentially was a tourist trap. All I can say is when it was under my stewardship, we ran a pretty tight
tight ship. You know, after April 2018, I wasn't in charge of how the business was run. So. Can't hear you, Chair. Sorry, I think you're on mute.
I muted myself instead of unmuting myself, which I was already. Right. Thank you for answering that. Simon, do you have any questions you wish to put to the in respect to the representations you just heard?
I don't have any. No, I don't have any direct questions. No.
Okay. So we now move to the residents, who are the other parties, to sum up their case. So would anybody like to? Do you all wish to sum up, or would some of you like to sum up?
Sorry, I put my hand up. I did want to. Sorry, this is Sarah England. Sorry, Chair.
Yeah.
I hope you don't mind me. I've done a bit of research. So the tap room was open for at least a year. He sold a majority share to Brewdog. You know, I've been reading up on this. And you only stepped down, and the applicant only stepped down from his other business. Yeah, you still own some of the business. So
No,
I feel
I'm
that
sorry,
you're stepping.
It's not really meeting to do this, but no, I didn't. No. I'm sorry. I have to defend myself there. And it's
but
not.
You haven't let me finish, and I'm still talking.
Well,
please let me finish.
Hang on a minute.
This isn't. Oh well, Chair. Sorry, you take over. Sorry,
Sarah. We're at the point where Simon is entitled. Well, we got beyond Simon being asked questions. I was just asking for people to summarise their case. Whilst I'm prepared to be fairly lax about it, but you're given an opportunity to ask questions of Simon, and you could have asked questions about that.
But I feel that he is shirking responsibility for the state of his other business. He said he stepped down. There was 2 years of public nuisance before.
I think that.
And at least a year while he was.
I think that point's been made, and I must now ask the residents to sum up their case. Who would like to start?
Given is Yasmin still on the call?
Yeah.
Because she was the first one to speak. So did you want to say it? If not, then I can go first.
I don't know if I'm summing up, but just on Sarah's point, I think she should have had the right to respond, because you did ask the question to Simon and he was allowed to say what he needed to say. And Sarah, I think, was just trying to get to the bottom of what was going on there. So I was finding that conversation quite interesting, because it's something I didn't know about, and to be honest, I hadn't done that much research on. But I've got nothing else to add. Thank you. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks. Magdalena, do you want to now sum up?
Yes. So around public nuisance, I think the women's safety and girls' predominantly safety is being brushed away, and I think that is the main point of my representation. Second point of my representation is about the fact that it's not about the unknown, as Simon said. It's about the known. We know what it's like to have a property that operates a late night alcohol sale license. We haven't lived since yesterday, and we can see how that will affect the quality of our lives and the lives of our children. Charlotte, who originally was meant to be in this meeting, her terrace overlooks the entrance to the premises, and the entire building is laid out in a way that pretty much 70 to 80% of residents will have had some kind of exposure to the noise coming from the premises. And having a small child, for Charlotte, the late night, even going to reduced of 11 p.m. And 12 on weekends is just unacceptable. The third point is that dispersal policies don't work, and we know they don't work because, again, we weren't born yesterday. And the fact that parking and car noise, pollution, all around the fact how are people getting to the premises is what worries me the most, in addition to women's safety, because the air quality in and around this area is already at a fair level, which essentially means most people will be okay to breathe it if they do not have underlying conditions. So taxis, cars, delivery trucks, staff getting into the premises, it's all going to affect the quality of our lives. Having a very small and limited space to be used as outside relaxation area, which are our terraces, which pretty much all of them face the premises. And so that, in 4 points, is my representation and why I oppose Burnt Faith's late alcohol license. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Carl and Sarah, do you wish to summarise?
No, I think I've said everything. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, has Yasmin spoken?
I've spoken, thank you.
Yes. And Ashish, would you like to summarise?
Yes, certainly. Thank you. So we've already established that Simon and his team will not be able to control what people do outside the premises. And on the 3 points that I've already mentioned, the licensing will fail to meet its objective. The license will fail to meet its objectives, and that is around prevention of public nuisance, public safety, and protection of children from harm. I have to say to Simon that it sounds like a fantastic business. We would really be in support of it. And as a local community, we've really taken in all the creative businesses in the local area. But you have to really think about the impact that it's going to have on our quality of life. And I don't still see why this business cannot just move on to the other side of Black Horse Lane, where there are breweries that already exist. So we would rather be the supporters of business than the detractors. But as it stands, if the business wants to open where it wants to open right now, we will be against the license, against granting them the license. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ashish. Do any of the neighbours have anything to add at this stage? This is your last opportunity to make an additional presentation in terms of a summary. I'm saying that just in case I've forgotten anybody or you just remember something else you wanted to add. Okay, thank you very much. Now it's up to Simon, who is the applicant, to summarise his case. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Firstly, I'd like to say that I'd like to thank all the residents for their views, and as I hope I got across in the residents' meeting, and I've tried to today, is to give an indication of what we can do as a business to work as good as we can within the remit of the Licensing Act and the way the Licensing Act is set out, and the ability that we have as a business to operate within the restrictions that Licensing Act has. We have always done that as a business. I understand there was some challenge to that, but originally, but I want to stress that where I've been involved, and I've been kind of solely in charge. Those are the ways we've always worked as effectively as we can within the Licensing Act. In terms of maybe it could be somewhere else, and maybe we could be doing it other places. The thought around that is very similar to how people buy houses and where they buy houses and what they can afford and what they can't afford and what they need from a place and what a place can do for them and what it can't do for them. And without going into great deal of depths around the technical side of things, that site is just it just worked for us. And as a resident of the area, and I think as the residents have kind of got across a little bit as well, is that the appetite for this is there, and I understand the concerns of the residents. But as I said, I can only prove what we can do when we do it. I can't do any more than that, and try and give the confidence of what I've done previously. So that would, all I would say is that judge us on what we do. That's it.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, that brings the today's proceedings to a conclusion. The committee now retires and to make our decision. I'd like to thank everybody for attending today, and I hope that I can assure you that we will be even-handed in our deliberations, and we will be making a decision in accordance with licensing law. So just to thank you all very much for coming again and making your contributions and taking the time to write and to attend.